She sat in the dim glow of the bedside lamp, fingers wrapped around a cup of tea that had long gone cold. Her voice trembled as she finally said the words out loud, as if speaking them would make them real in a way her heart still refused to accept. "He left me for someone younger," she whispered, her eyes fixed on the floor. Then, after a pause that felt heavier than silence itself, she looked up with fragile hope and asked, "Am I still beautiful?" It wasn't just a question, it was a plea, a crack in the armor she had spent years building around her confidence. For years, she had been the woman people admired, graceful, intelligent, warm. She had loved deeply, given endlessly, and believed that loyalty meant something permanent. But now, sitting alone in a room that still echoed with memories of laughter, she felt like she had been quietly replaced, like an old photograph tucked away in a drawer no one opens anymore. The truth was, the betrayal hadn't come suddenly. It had crept in slowly, late-night messages, distant conversations, the subtle absence of affection that she had once taken for granted. She remembered the nights she had tried to talk, to reach him, to understand what was slipping away between them. But he had already checked out long before he walked out the door. And when he finally did leave, it wasn't with anger or guilt, it was with indifference. That hurt the most. Not the fact that he found someone else, but that he seemed so unaffected by losing her. As if everything they had built together was easily replaceable. She stood up and walked toward the mirror, her reflection staring back at her like a stranger. She studied every detail, the faint lines near her eyes, the softness in her expression, the quiet strength hidden beneath her sadness. Is this what he stopped loving, she thought. Society had always whispered the same cruel message, youth is beauty, beauty is value. And now those whispers echoed louder in her mind, feeding her insecurities. But deep inside, beneath the layers of doubt, there was a voice, soft but persistent, that refused to let her completely break. Days turned into weeks, and the silence in her home became something she had to learn to live with. At first, it was unbearable. Every corner reminded her of him. The couch where they watched movies, the kitchen where they cooked together, even the balcony where they once dreamed about the future. But slowly, something began to change. The silence stopped feeling like emptiness and started feeling like space, space to breathe, to think, to rediscover herself. She began doing small things for herself again, reading books she had neglected, taking long walks in the evening, reconnecting with parts of herself she had forgotten while trying to be everything for someone else. One evening, she found herself laughing at something trivial, a memory, a joke, a fleeting moment, and it surprised her. It wasn't forced. It was real. And in that moment, she realized something powerful, her happiness had never truly belonged to him. It had always been hers, waiting patiently beneath the weight of her sacrifices. She started to understand that his leaving wasn't a reflection of her worth, it was a reflection of his inability to see it. The question still lingered, though. Am I still beautiful? But now, it began to evolve. It wasn't about him anymore. It was about her. She began to see beauty not as something defined by age or comparison, but as something deeper, resilience, kindness, the ability to love and still stand strong after heartbreak. She looked at herself again in the mirror one morning, but this time with different eyes. She didn't see someone abandoned. She saw someone who had survived. Months later, she ran into an old friend who hadn't seen her in years. They talked, laughed, and caught up on life. At one point, her friend looked at her and said, "You look different, stronger, happier. There's something about you." She smiled, not because she needed the validation, but because she finally believed it herself. She had transformed, not into someone new, but into someone more real, more grounded, more aware of her own worth. And then one day, unexpectedly, she saw him again. He looked the same, yet somehow smaller. There was no anger in her heart, no longing, no regret, just a quiet sense of closure. He tried to speak, to explain, to perhaps justify his choices, but she didn't need any of it. She had already found her answers. As she walked away, she realized something that once felt impossible, she no longer needed his approval to feel beautiful. She paused for a moment, took a deep breath, and smiled to herself. Yes, she whispered, this time with certainty, I am still beautiful. Not because someone chose her, but because she chose herself. If this story touched your heart even a little, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful and emotional stories that remind you of your true worth. Sometimes, all we need is a story to remind us who we really are.